Here we're going to look at a case where we have a couple of variables that we want to represent on one chart. We've got an x-axis, which will be our temperature, and then we want to show for each temperature how many units of ice cream did we sell and how much total profit did we make. So we can use a bubble chart to show this. So let's go ahead and select our data. We'll just go ahead and select everything. And I'm going to insert. I'll click recommended charts. Let's explore all charts. So if we look at this recommendation, for example, you can see we want to represent temperature on the x-axis, but then we got two variables on the y-axis. We have our units sold here in these bars represented in blue, and our profit represented in orange. This is an okay way to show this data. It works all right, but we can represent it using a bubble chart. So I'm going to select this bubble and click OK. So let's talk about why this might be a good representation of the data. All right, we'll take a look at it. It's not formatted super nicely, but let's change it a little bit. Let's add axis titles. So this is going to be temperature, and this is going to be units sold. I'll call this ice cream profit. And I think this formatting is not fantastic. Let's look at some other formatting. That's okay. This chart is pretty squished. Let's change it around a little bit. So I'm going to click on the x-axis. Very often it's good to start at 0 for your axes. This time it's not super helpful. So I'm going to format this axis, change the minimum. Let's see, what should my minimum be? About 30. And the maximum, I'm going to say 100. Whoops, not 1,100, 100. That's going to give me a little bit better separation of my data. And I can make a minimum on the y-axis. Let's go and format that. The minimum, let's say the minimum is 250, no, 300. Let's go for 300. And the max, let's change that to 1400. Okay, so that fits my data a little bit better. So what is this telling me? So the center of each of these circles represents the intersection of temperature and the number of units sold. So I know as it gets warmer, this chart is telling me that I'm selling more units of ice cream. So that intuitively makes sense. When it's hot out, people want to eat ice cream. But the size of the bubble is representing the other variable in this chart, which is profit. So here, we can see the size is $300. The size of this bubble here in the middle is $1,100. So the bigger the circle, the bigger the profit. So what does this chart tell us? Well, our profit actually maximizes when we're about 65, 70 degrees. For some reason, even though we're selling more units, our profit is actually shrinking. Now this is made up data, but we might interpret this as, you know, when people are comfortable, maybe they're willing to splurge a little bit, buying more toppings, whatever it is. And when it gets super hot, people just want the cheapest cold thing they can stuff in their mouth. And so we might use this to make some different business decisions. So a bubble chart is just a different way of representing two variables with a single data point here. So it can be useful in a bunch of different circumstances.